Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today for our virtual information session. My name is Monique Gatling, and I am the founder and executive director of Virginia Pathways to Justice. And I am so excited to share more about our 2026 Emerging Leaders for Environmental Equity program, otherwise known as our ELEE program, sponsored by Clean Virginia. Go a little bit into more about why this work is so critical for our communities, not only here in Hampton Roads, but across our Commonwealth. So today I'm going to go over a little bit about who we are, some frequently used terms that you'll be hearing throughout this conversation tonight, and then the purpose and goals of this program, right? And then we're going to talk a little bit about eligibility requirements and when the applications are due. So who are we? At Virginia Pathways to Justice, we work to advance equity, justice, and civic engagement by empowering communities of color through grassroots organizing, advocacy, and policy-driven solutions that create lasting systemic change. Environmental justice is central to our mission. Communities of color are disproportionately impacted by pollution, climate change, and harmful land use decisions. Our work focuses on ensuring that all Virginians, regardless of zip code, have access to clean air, safe water, and healthy, sustainable environments. So a little bit about who I am. Like I mentioned, I am the founder and executive director of Virginia Pathways to Justice, and my background is rooted in community organizing, strategic advocacy, and civic engagement. I've led efforts across Virginia to uplift underrepresented voices, expand access to democracy, and push for policies that reflect the lived experience of our communities. I was honored to be named the 2025 Top 40 Under 40 for this area, but more importantly, my work is grounded in service, right? Building trust, developing leaders, and ultimately creating pathways for people who have historically been excluded from decision-making spaces. So this program really deeply reflects my belief that leadership development should be really intentional, accessible, and directly connected to real community needs. So before moving forward, I want to acknowledge Clean Virginia, who has been a key partner and supporter of this work. So a little bit about Clean Virginia. They fight utility monopoly influence in Virginia politics. They advance clean government and clean affordable energy. They put people over powerful corporate interests, which is so important right now, especially under this administration. They hold elected officials accountable to the communities they serve. And more importantly, they work towards a healthier environment and lower costs for families here in our Commonwealth. So before diving deeper and sharing a little bit more about our program, I want to briefly ground us in a few key terms we'll be using throughout the program and in tonight's presentation. So having a shared language is really essential for us doing this work effectively and getting you to understand what it is that we will be working on and working towards. So, environmental racism refers to the disproportionate impact of environmental hazards on people of color. This harm stems from intentional institutional policies and decisions, such as placing polluting industries, toxic waste sites, or hazardous infrastructure in communities of color. These patterns are not accidental at all, they are the results of a long standing systemic choice. When we say environmental justice, that means the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of race, income, or background, in environmental decision making. It ensures that communities most impacted by environmental harm have a real voice in shaping the policies that affect their health and quality of life. You'll hear us mention energy democracy, and that basically means and represents a shift away from a centralized, corporate controlled fossil fuel economy towards one that is community governed. It prioritizes no harm to the environment, supports local economies, and promotes the health and well being of all people, especially those historically excluded from energy decision making. You'll also hear me and throughout the program us saying BIPOC. We are simply referring to Black, Indigenous, and people of color, communities that have been disproportionately impacted by environmental injustice and systemic inequities. When you hear us talk about equity, equity goes beyond treating everyone the same, right? Equity recognizes that people face different barriers and challenges, and it focuses on providing resources and opportunities in ways that level the playing field, especially for historically disadvantaged communities. Advocacy is defined as any action taken to support, defend, or argue for a cause or community. Advocacy is not lobbying. It includes educating the public, organizing communities, storytelling, and educating decision makers to push for equitable outcomes. And finally, a capstone project is a culminating real-world assignment where participants apply what they've learned to address a community issue. In our program, the capstone serves as a bridge between learning and practice, right? Demonstrating readiness to lead and create change. And I also went ahead and attached a one-pager of these definitions right here. So if you want to go ahead and scan that QR code if you want to learn more, you definitely can. So up next, we're going to talk a little bit about our purpose and the goals of this program. So the purpose of our Emerging Leaders for Environmental Equity program is to cultivate the next generation of environmental justice leaders here in Virginia. By centering environmental racism and community-driven solutions, our program empowers participants to develop leadership and advocacy skills while engaging directly with local environmental and energy issues that affect their community's health, safety, and futures. So let's get into some of our goals, right? Our first goal we want to talk about is education. We deepen participants' understanding of environmental racism and energy democracy with a strong focus on how these issues disproportionately impact Black, Indigenous, and other communities of color. Through workshops, discussions, and real world case studies, cohort members explore the historical roots of environmental injustice, current policy challenges, and the role communities play in shaping equitable energy solutions. The second goal is empowerment through action. Participants collaborate on a shared capstone project that addresses urgent environmental or energy related challenges in their communities. These projects are community centered, solutions oriented, and designed to turn knowledge into action while building confidence and leadership capacity. Another thing we will focus heavily on is leadership and advocacy development. Participants will receive training in public speaking, policy analysis, grassroots organizing, and strategic storytelling, equipping them to engage decision makers, influence policy, and amplify community voices effectively. And last but certainly not least is community engagement, right? And community engagement is really at the heart of our ELEE program. Participants build relationships with residents, advocates, and local leaders to ensure solutions are deeply rooted in lived experiences. This approach strengthens trust, collaboration, and long-term civic participation. Now I want to talk about how ELEE is structured, right? So this is a 12-week hybrid program that includes engaging workshops and training sessions, a small cohort of 4 participants allowing for deep collaboration, a unified capstone project focused on real community solutions, and a final showcase where participants present to local councils and stakeholders, and then funding opportunities to ensure participants have the resources needed to succeed. This structure is intentionally designed to balance learning, collaboration, and real-world impact. So at its core, our program is about empowering BIPOC leaders for lasting environmental change. The program builds leadership capacity and confidence while preparing participants to advocate effectively for their communities. Through a comprehensive capstone project, cohort members address local environmental challenges, elevate BIPOC voices in policy discussions, and help create a legacy of leadership that extends far beyond the program itself. Okay, so here's a brief overview of the program's timeline. December 1st is when the applications open. January 12th is when the applications close. Between then and March 4th, you all will receive a letter of acceptance. The first cohort training will begin on March 4th in person. By May 3rd, community project proposals are presented for the first time. And then by May 27th, we will have located a city council that we will be presenting our findings to. And then May 31st will be graduation day, program evaluation, and participant feedback. So this timeline ensures participants move from learning to action to public engagement in a clear and supported way. We at Virginia Pathways to Justice deeply believe that leadership development should be accessible. Each of our 4 participants, upon completion of the program, will receive a $500 stipend, and the cohort is supported by a $2,000 capstone grant to cover project-related expenses. This funding allows participants to focus on impact and not financial barriers. So some potential focus areas for the capstone project will include, but not limited to, Norfolk, right, where we could focus on community air monitoring initiatives, flooding, heat islands, same thing over in Portsmouth with the heat islands, and then education campaigns around toxic site cleanups. Or we can go over to the peninsula, to Newport News and in Hampton, and do resident advocacy on coal dust impacts and data centers. Ultimately, the cohort will vote collectively to select one focus area and location. We welcome all ideas for cohort members to review and decide on together, ensuring the project reflects shared priorities and community needs. And so finally, we're going to talk about eligibility requirements and who this program was initially intended and designed for. We want people who demonstrate interest in environmental justice, community organizing, advocacy, or public policy. We are asking for applicants to be between the ages of 18 to 40 years old, including college students, young adults, and emerging leaders. We are also asking participants to be able to commit to the full 12-week program, including hybrid sessions and team meetings. We're also asking people to be willing to collaborate, research, and co-create a shared capstone project. And lastly, have reliable internet access and be able for in-person workshops throughout Hampton Roads. All right, y'all. So before we wrap up, I want to leave you all with this beautiful quote by the amazing author Octavia Butler. And the quote says, "All that you touch, you change. All that you change, changes you. The only lasting truth is change." And so ultimately, when I think about this quote, I think about the power of change, right? And how it is inevitable. And so when I think about this quote, I really think about how sometimes we may overlook the influence and the power in us just being present and participating, and how much change we can actually enact just by using our voices and getting out there and making sure that we are influencing policies that are beneficial for our community and our people. Overall, our ELEE program is about more than leadership training. It's about building power, voice, and opportunity in communities that have long been excluded from the environmental decision making. We are investing in people, honoring lived experiences, and creating pathways for BIPOC leaders to shape policy, protect their communities, and lead Virginia towards a more just and sustainable future. So thank y'all so much for joining me tonight and your time and your attention, and I will be happy to answer any questions.